Boston College has taken a chip out of the Ohio State coaching staff yet again. Bill O'Brien is the new head. What are you laughing at, Bill? These are snap judgments. They're brought to you by Byers Auto. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Bill O'Brien has spent 3 magical weeks in Columbus, and now he's shipping off to Boston. He is the head coach of the Eagles, the new head coach, following in the footsteps of Jeff Hafley, he spent longer than 3 weeks with the Buckeyes, but he was also a former Ohio State assistant. So now what, Bill?
I liked your choice of words there. You just pulled the word chip out of thin air, huh?
Well, I'm sorry. That was an accident.
Now what is like, don't panic. I think, right? This is very strange. Ryan Day certainly did not see this coming when he hired Bill O'Brien, and I think it was January 19th is the day that it was officially announced, and it is incredibly strange that we're now talking about him leaving so soon. But I don't know that this should derail Ryan Day's plans to talk or to follow through with the shift, I guess, that we've been talking about, for the latter part of this week, about him giving up the play calling and transitioning more to a CEO role. Like, there's still time for him, I think, to be diligent in finding Bill O'Brien's replacement and finding one that may not have the exact same credentials as Bill O'Brien, but credentials that I still think, would be impressive and that are required to fill this job. So I guess I would just caution like Ohio State fans, like, yes, this is not ideal, but it's like, it's not the end of the world in my mind. And I don't mean to sound hypocritical when I say that, because like, I know that we were all, at least I don't want to speak for you guys. Like, I thought the Bill O'Brien hire was a really good hire and an impressive one for Ohio State. And I'm not trying to like do the thing where that guy leaves and go, oh, he stinks, it's fine. Like, that was a really good hire, but he's not the only offensive coordinator on the planet, and Ohio State has the means, both financially and in terms of like, credibility and standing within the sport, to go find somebody else who's good. And I think they will.
I think it's important that we consider definitions. And I'm not sure that we should say that Bill O'Brien was an Ohio State assistant. So I think he was he
looked at the playbook. He made some feedback about the offensive line. He changed some terminology. He contributed during the 3 weeks in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
Here's the deal. My opinion on this is simple. I really loved the Bill O'Brien hire. I was adamant about that. I think that there are coaches out there that, as Bill said, may not match the resume exactly, but that will have the ability to do a lot of the same things that Bill O'Brien was expected to do. I think the biggest difference is that you can't reach out to quarterbacks and be like, well, this guy coached Tom Brady. So that's about the biggest difference, especially if you go out there and you do what I think we all believe is a real possibility and end up hiring Chip Kelly, the head coach of UCLA, to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, which seems like it's something that could happen because Chip Kelly seems to be more interested in getting out of Los Angeles than I do whenever I'm there. And that is crazy because I hate it there. So if Chip Kelly's serious about his desire to depart the situation with the Bruins, if he doesn't get the Seahawks offensive coordinator job, which I don't know, we're not Seahawks media. We don't really understand where things are in their process, but the relationship between Ryan Day and Chip Kelly is certainly better than the relationship between Ryan Day and Bill O'Brien. He's a former NFL head coach. He's a current college football head coach in the Big Ten. He is a former NFL offensive coordinator. He is Ryan Day's mentor. He is a guy that certainly Ryan Day would trust implicitly, probably more so than anyone else in the country. And I think it seems like a natural fit to slide in and take that spot. But we'll see if Ohio State is really interested in that, and if Chip Kelly is really interested in that. It seems like he is.
I was told on Wednesday. Let me think about what day it is. That if Chip Kelly does not get the job in Seattle, he would, and was offered the offensive coordinator job at Ohio State, he would take it 1,000%. The rift between
10 times more than he's humanly possible of
that's
doing.
Right. That's math. I don't know what originally caused this. I guess maybe like thinking about firing Chip Kelly for the last 2 years is probably the simplest solution here. But for another Ohio State tie, Martin Jarman and Chip Kelly do not seem to want to have any interest in working for each other, with each other, together into the future. UCLA could not afford to fire him, and Chip Kelly would, or his new employer would have to pay $1.5 million for him to leave. It seems like that's no longer an impediment. Maybe Chip Kelly wants to pay that out of his own pocket to get out of UCLA. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's going to keep Ohio State from being involved with Chip Kelly. We'll see what happens. Like, we're getting ahead of things here because Bill O'Brien has just been announced as the head coach at Boston College, or the next head coach. We've been able to like joke around a little bit about this move, which I think is probably the surest sign that like there's a different level of confidence maybe that Ryan Day can get this right. He made a hire that I don't think any of us expected, a bold one, an aggressive one. I wasn't sure exactly how it would work out, but it seemed like it was the biggest swing that Ryan Day could have made. So from that perspective, like, there seems to be a different way that Ryan Day is attacking the job and a different way that we're even evaluating something that's like, it's the offensive coordinator and somebody who only stayed for 3 weeks. That's a pretty big deal. And none of the three of us are acting like it really is at all.
That's the Ryan Day coaching tree. It's just growing like crazy. He gets credit for this, right?
Yeah, now he'll get credit for like whatever assistants that Bill O'Brien hires. Like, that's all part of it. Oh, the Ryan Day tree.
Awesome.
That's great. Yeah. The only thing that would, I guess, like increase my panic meter is if I at all got the impression from Ryan Day when we talked to him on Wednesday that if and when this happened with Bill O'Brien, he would like deviate from the plan and like just say like, oh, I tried, and this is God's way of telling me that I shouldn't be giving up play calling by sending Bill O'Brien to Boston College. But I didn't get that impression. I got the impression that Ryan Day has made this decision. It felt like a little bit of a he crossed the Rubicon. He's not going back. And he'll just find somebody else to do what Bill O'Brien was going to do for him. So as long as that's the case, then I feel okay, right? And it's not like, I think it's fair to have healthy skepticism, I guess, about anyone's ability to do the job 100% right all the time. But something about the mode that Ryan Day is in this offseason, to your point, Austin, I think gives me more confidence that he'll find somebody else who's good. Like, and it's not, I think some people like the Bill O'Brien hire more than others. I actually think there's probably more people that might be more enthused by Chip Kelly than they were Bill O'Brien because of, Chip Kelly's offensive success in college football, like his sort of standing in college football, and the fact that he and Ryan Day are so close. I actually could see a way where you might kind of embrace that hire a little bit more. But even if it's not Chip Kelly, like there are other potentially interesting options out there as well. So I'm not like overly concerned that Ryan Day is going to like bungle this because he got dealt kind of a raw deal by Bill O'Brien going to Boston College.
By Jeff Halfway, you mean?
Yes, for the second time.
I think another reason that we're focused primarily here on this Chip Kelly conversation is that we had all of December and half of January to talk about some of the other candidates that were in the mix for Ohio State with Jason Candle and Brian Johnson. Like we didn't even talk about Bill O'Brien that much. We definitely didn't talk about Chip Kelly. It did not seem like at that time Chip Kelly was so adamant about forcing his way out. We had discussed the possibility. I think it was like the week after the Michigan loss, and Berm's like,
yeah, we were well,
Chip Kelly's about to get fired. And I'm like, no, he's not. And he's like, then he's coming to Ohio State. I'm like, no, he's not. So he didn't get fired, but he might be coming to Ohio State anyway. And then Berm's going to be like, I told you so.
Because they should have fired him because he wanted to be fired. And this would have been cleaner for everybody. But if it's only $1.5 million buyout for a head coach in the Big Ten, it's pretty much worth it. I think both sides at that juncture probably played it right, or UCLA played it right, or Martin Jarman did, whatever you want to say. But I think the interesting thing is if it were to be Chip Kelly, and again, we're working on a lot of hypotheticals here. There's a lot of things that could go in different directions. He's like a very run-heavy guy, and Ohio State's offense is set up in the 2024 season to be a kind of a power offense. And despite the fact that they have, the best senior receiver in the country and the best sophomore receiver in the country and the best freshman receiver in the country, they're set up to be a run-heavy offense. And I think that it's actually a really good fit from a 2024 perspective if it was Chip Kelly, because I think he's the right guy to get the most out of that run game. And so, it's nice to see full circle moments. It was 20 years ago, probably 25 years ago when Chip Kelly was Ryan Day's offensive coordinator, and now here he could be Ryan Day's offensive coordinator again. Beautiful
I think,
life.
I think,
It's a riddle.
I think the most interesting part, if that does wind up being plan B behind Bill O'Brien for Ohio State, is like you could see what the criticisms would be. Ryan Day went outside the circle of trust, was going to trust Bill O'Brien to take over both the quarterbacks and the offense and the play calling. And when that didn't work, he went to his mentor, and like it's going to be the same stuff. Like Justin Fry and Chip Kelly have worked together. Now he's got his buddies, and like that's, I guess, unfortunate if that is the criticism that's leveled against him, because his mentor is one of the most highly thought about offensive minds in football. Both had some success. Bill can talk about that, maybe not forever and extensively with the Eagles, but he had NFL success, and he's had a measure of success certainly in college at multiple stops. So like if any other program or any other head coach was able to pluck Chip Kelly away from being the head coach at UCLA to be their offensive coordinator, people would say, oh my God, this is the greatest move of all time. And Ryan Day is probably the one person where he'd be like, well, is he really being as aggressive as he needs to be? Like, that's his friend, and he's known him for 25 years.
Yeah, Doug is super like anti-nepotism right now, which I understand. This isn't really what I would consider, if that were to happen, a nepotism hire. But
well, they're not related.
Yeah, they're not related, but they are related. They're connected. But
what did he just
do?
The
whole idea of a nepo hire being a bad idea is that it's a bad idea when that person sucks at their job. And I don't think that Chip Kelly sucks at his job. And therefore, if it were to occur, I think people should be like, hey, pretty good. We just took a head coach from UCLA to be our offense coordinator. Like, remove the name and just look at the resume and look at the accolades and be like, okay, that is a great hire if it were to occur. And I think it's important we asterisk this as much as we can. Like, if
the problem with if the familiarity is top of the list of reasons why you're hiring them, that's when it becomes an issue. But I don't think that's the case here with Chip Kelly. I think the familiarity helps, but I also don't think like Chip Kelly's going to theoretically come to Columbus and be a yes man for Ryan Day, right? It would be an interesting dynamic for Chip Kelly, who was Ryan Day's coach and then like his boss, to then now come and like work under Ryan Day. But I don't think that suddenly flips to the point where Chip Kelly's just doing whatever Ryan Day tells him to do. I actually think their long-standing relationship could be beneficial for both of them, like to have a little bit of pushback, a little bit of back and forth and sharing of ideas, right? And I think Bill O'Brien would have had that too, right? He's been doing this long enough, and he's frankly more experienced than Ryan Day, so he has the cachet to do that. But it might even mean more coming from Chip than it might have meant coming from Bill O'Brien, if you're Ryan Day. To Burnham's point about the rushing attack, I was just looking up as you were talking. UCLA has had a top 20 rushing offense each of the last 4 years. They're really creative with the way they run the ball. I think that would be incredibly helpful for Ohio State. And then another point about Chip Kelly too, because I saw some people talking about this on the board at Rivals, and I think maybe we got some text about it too. He has coached quarterbacks. When he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, he was also the quarterbacks coach. And I think when he was the offensive coordinator at New Hampshire, he was also the quarterbacks coach. It's not like listed on his Wikipedia page, but he was. He's coached running backs, he's coached offensive line, he's coached defensive backs, which he played. I think he coached tight ends at a time, and he has also coached quarterbacks. So he's not a quarterback by trade, but he has like a decade-ish worth of experience of coaching the position, which is also another part of this conversation, because Bill O'Brien obviously was going to coach the quarterbacks as well. And I think there are guys who call plays who don't coach quarterbacks, but I do think Ryan Day probably needs to hire somebody who can do both at this point.
Yeah, we got two questions more than anything else. One was, if Chip Kelly replaces Bill O'Brien, does that mean Ryan Day has to just give up on the initial plans and like start coaching quarterbacks again? And I think that the short answer would be no, either because Chip Kelly could do that at the level that I think, maybe he's not an expert at passing mechanics, but the leading an offense part and working with a quarterback and teaching them reads and where to go with football, I think Chip Kelly's more than qualified to do that. But if more assistance is needed, Ohio State could still lean on Todd Fitch to do that and elevate him a little bit more to hands-on role than he's had in the past. That's one solution there. That's a quick one. And the other one might be just as quick, Burnham, which was that people wanted to know if Julian Sand was only coming to Ohio State because of Bill O'Brien and if he was going to go to Boston College. So what would be your response to that?
That is silly.
That's what I thought. I think the number one player in the country who was committed to Alabama, signed with Alabama, and then decided he wanted to go to Ohio State, probably wants to compete and surround himself with the best caliber of athletes. Be my read.
Also,
that's not Boston College.
Also, yes, Bill O'Brien was gone for Alabama for a year. That Julian's saying that was committed and signed with them when he wasn't at Alabama.
Well, we got the questions, and I want to defer to your expertise.
I get it. People are panicked about everything. It makes sense. That's not a concern. What is interesting to me, if you look at the discussion around Todd Fitch, is how intent CJ Stroud seems to be on getting him another job somewhere. Stop talking about him, CJ.
Yeah, that was interesting. Both who he mentioned and who he did not mention was interesting.
Go on.
No,
he didn't mention any of us.
Yeah.
Berm discovered CJ Stroud, and I cannot believe that he didn't get shouted out at the NFL honors. I feel for you. But
yeah, you should have. Shout out to Berm for finding me. Wouldn't be here without you. It's just that simple.
It's easy. Could have been done. Anyway. That's
what okay, so let's before we wrap, because I know we spent 15 minutes talking about Chip Kelly. If it's not Chip Kelly, does it feel like it's automatically going to be a coach like Jason Candle, or do we think that Ryan Day will open up that search even further? Because it's 2.5 weeks until spring practice starts, so it becomes a real time crunch.
It seems to me like the NFL experience is too important to Ryan Day for him to immediately pivot to Jason Candle. So I think he would maybe go down the road with a couple other NFL guys, or at least guys that have NFL in their background, before he'd go to Jason Candle. But I could be wrong on that.
So, Bill, I think Brian Johnson is trying to get in the mix with the Commanders, right? Like Chip Kelly's, interviewing and trying to get the job with the Seahawks. Like I feel like those would be A and B in the new plan. And the whole time, the conversation with Jason Candle was like, if Ryan Day can't land anybody from the NFL, then here you are. Which, I mean, I'm sure that's not a fun spot for Jason Candle to be in, because he seems to have a lot of interest in the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, helping him get to the next level. But I agree with you. My understanding is like that NFL stuff seems paramount. Chip Kelly's not coming directly from the NFL, but he has been there and has just more experience than anybody else. If there's one problem, if you want to call it that, with Brian Johnson's resume, it's that it's not that extensive. Certainly not compared to Bill O'Brien or Chip Kelly.
What about Eric Bieniemy?
Yeah, I was going to say Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job currently. But the other thing with Eric Bieniemy is like the knock on him for not getting head coaching jobs was that everyone attributed the credit for the Chiefs offense to Andy Reid. So then Eric Bieniemy felt like he had to branch out and go somewhere else. And then when he did that, the offense sucked. So, but it also was with Washington that doesn't have a whole lot going on for itself. So I don't know, but like that's at least an experienced NFL play caller who has college in his background. He is one though that I don't think has coached quarterbacks. He's a former running back. I don't know if he has that on his resume anywhere. So that would create the interesting scenario with like a Todd Fitch kind of thing where he'd have to step up, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else strike your fancy? Are you going to beg for Kellen Moore again?
Now, I know Ryan Day is interested in the NFL pedigree. What about the head coach of the San Diego LA Chargers? He's worked with quarterbacks before.
Yes.
Has college success. Just saying. Take a swing.
Please send all letters to Berm.
Sharon Moore might be looking for a job soon too.
Yeah, I mean he may unfortunately need a job by this time next year, but no, I think that it's clear that the NFL focus is paramount for Ryan Day, and I wonder how far down the NFL like coaching rosters he's willing to go in order to get someone, because if that's the only thing that matters, like. The thing about Bill O'Brien is not only did you get an NFL offensive coordinator, he's a former NFL head coach. He's a former college head coach. Like he's a guy that has a louder voice in a room that's going to be able to push back against Ryan Day when maybe he needs to be told, hey, you don't need to be in here right now. Get out. And again, as we said, Chip Kelly would probably do that same thing. I don't know that there's any other like if you go further down and you're in like the passing game coordinator for the Green Bay Packers or whatever, then it becomes a situation where you're like, does that guy have enough gravitas to push back against Ryan Day? And I don't know that he would. And so I think that it really does limit that search to people who have head coach experience in some way, shape, or form, and or at least NFL offensive coordinator experience. So how much further down the list you go, I think is the question that he would have to ask himself. And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, we'll see, because Ryan Day has to make another major offseason move here with an offensive coordinator, with Bill O'Brien off to Boston College following his 3-week stint in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Breaking it all down for you right here on Snap Judgments, which are brought to you by Buyers Auto. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with one soon to talk about the next hire for Ohio State. I don't know when, but there will be another one, I promise. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.